This is the old
Go
farts.
ahead, Bob.
Okay. And tonight we're going to at least start by talking about what's going on in Ukraine and what should the United States do. We're at a point in time where Ukraine has been resupplied with a great deal of armament, and they're in the process a um, of a counterattack to try to retake territory that Russia took not only in this last year in the invasion, but back in 2014 when they took the Crimea, and that seems to be one of the goals. Uh, so the real question is, what should the United States and Europe, because Europe is a major player here as well, but what should we be doing, um, not only right now, but what should our plans be in the future? Do we want to continue to provide however many billions of dollars we're providing every year? Um, do we want to try to force the Ukraine to negotiate to end the conflict? Um, there are a bunch of different options, and just throwing out the question: what should the United States be doing? Paul, you happen to be number one on my
Yeah,
list.
the negotiation that the Russians claim they want is all of the land that they think they have, that they think is part of Russia. And the Ukrainians say, no, it's part of Ukraine. And I see that as almost a non-starter. Um, I don't see the negotiations happening soon because they, you know, the Russians staked their reputation on retrieving the land that Ukraine stole them, and the fact of the matter is out of Ukraine. So I don't see the negotiations going very smoothly.
Well, I agree with you, but if the United States decided, by the way, I'm not promoting this, I'm just taking it, showing what the position might be. If the United States decided that they didn't want to continue the war, maybe because they were worried that it might escalate or that they were tired of spending the money or whatever, maybe just um, a new president who had other priorities, they could try, not necessarily do, but try to have the Ukraine go to Zelensky and say, "Hey, you have to negotiate. You have to go to the negotiating table, and you're not going to get everything you want." Um, and we could probably force that because I think Ukraine really is dependent upon the weapons that they're getting from the U.S. and the EU. I'm not, as I said, I'm not promoting it, but that's certainly one of the things that some of the GOP aspirants for the nomination are proposing.
Well, see, the premise of the whole war is that Ukraine has, Russians want to liberate their fellow Russians who are supposed to be in Ukraine, so that territory belongs to Russia. And the second part is that because NATO is always essentially negotiating with Ukraine to become part of NATO, so Russia doesn't want that part of it. They want to get rid of this piece, and so they want to capture the territory before anything such happens. But at the same time, given that United States is supplying weapons, the Europeans are supplying weapons. That essentially is playing a proxy war against Russia. Mighty machine that way. They may be losing here and there, but at the same time, I don't think at the moment Putin is going to give up. And at the same time, long term, as you said, that there are candidates who want other avenues. But the problem there is that is United States ready to let Putin do things to Ukraine? Next thing you know, they will do it the same thing to some other country, and so that is not going to help overall peace in the world. And at the same time, forcing Zelensky to give up some territory is again not going to play well with the overall strategy of protecting the democracies and protecting the downtrodden. And I don't know where the middle ground is if we try to push them do that. So that's what I worry about. That although there are different voices, there are, and also at the same time there are limited resources. The resources are not going to be growing on trees, for that matter. But at the same time, we have to find a solution. And that's what actually, one of the things I had read, I don't know whether it is true or not, there was a push by some African initiative to bring all these parties to the table. But as Paul pointed out, I don't think they are going to, Putin is going to agree to that. So I think it's a dilemma actually for Biden, that given that his presidency essentially has his foreign policy has been defined by this war unknowingly, and it has been brewing over. I mean, it has been this war type of atmosphere had been brewing for several years, even before Biden showed up, and that's what the
even before Trump showed
Russian
up.
guy. I'm sorry.
I said even before Trump showed up.
Yes, even
because
before Trump showed up.
It was going on during Obama.
Yeah,
right. The Crimea annexation was 2014.
I mean, that's what that
close
guy
to
Posner. And if you remember, there's a Russian columnist, radio personality, TV personality, Posner, who grew up in Brooklyn, speaks with fantastic Brooklyn accent, and he talks about how it is the United States that have pushed Putin to really do this war act because of the way the United States and NATO has played the game. They have not played fairly, but that's how it works actually. This you can complain forever, but that is not the real issue.
Yeah, I'm not clear that because I haven't heard Posner, but I'm not clear what he thought that NATO should have done. I know that Obama in 2014 was not willing to get involved either directly or indirectly in a shooting war, so he provided economic and humanitarian aid. By 2018, Trump, not so much Trump, the Congress had changed their tune and had voted to provide aid, lethal aid, military aid to Ukraine. And that's kind of where Trump got into trouble during the first impeachment. He did not provide the aid that Congress passed. And that's something under his control. But the law says that if you aren't going to do it, you have to tell Congress that you're not doing it and why. And he didn't do that. And he was trying to get Zelensky to go along with some of his things, and only provided the aid when he essentially was outed. So things have changed. I Again, I don't know what Posner thought should be done. I do know that there are large Russian populations in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and over the years, Russia has made a number of statements saying that these countries are not treating the population properly, which sounds so much like 1939 and 38. So we need to keep that in mind. I do have to say something. In Chamberlain, who's considered the greatest peaser of all time, when he allowed Hitler to take Eastern Czechoslovakia, his military was not prepared for a war. And had he said, we're going to fight, it would have been useless and probably cost England the war because the military wasn't ready. They spent the next 2 years building it up so that they were to a point where they at least had a shot. So, but I don't think that's the case here. I think America has had a stockpile along with Western Europe, but I don't know if we're ready to go to a land war with Russia. I'm not sure that we'll ever be ready to go for a land war with Russia, particularly in Eastern Europe. But
That all depends on how much of all of Europe decides about Eastern Europe.
well, I mean, you already have Hungary, which isn't real excited about what NATO's doing. You've got Turkey, which is not excited about what NATO's doing. So NATO itself is not united. And probably they're going along with it rather than trying to come up with some kind of a negotiated settlement because of the U.S. pushing things. So what should the U.S. do? Should we be making this our I don't know, like Vietnam or whatever, so that there's we're all in? Or I shouldn't say all in would be when we start fighting ourselves.
Well, the
Level
problem with all that is that you have Europe dependent on lot of countries dependent on Russian fuel supplies and grain supplies Ukraine, but Russian fuel, and so it's kind of a very delicate dance the countries have to do to keep themselves to survive and at the same time oppose. And I don't envy that position, but at the same time, if United States is holding the line that you can't be doing this, but some solution has to be found that just by supplying arms, you're essentially keeping it simmering. But I don't know whether Putin is getting the message that you cannot go and invade the other countries you are trying to say that the Russians are suffering. Because I think this Ukrainian war, as long as it keeps going, it's at a level where Russia is not catastrophically losing. It's kind of keeping those borders moving around, and they can at the same time open another front just to annoy NATO and US, and that could be another strategy which Putin might be thinking about, because he has been making noise, as you pointed out, that now my Russian folks are not being treated well. Look at Belarus. Belarus is already gone, essentially. And so next thing you know, there will be another small country gone. And then what is the US going to do? That's why I kind of favor some kind of a cohesive approach, which includes negotiations, but at the same time keeps the support alive. I don't know how that is done, but you are a better person in political science to deal with it.
Well, this is more, it's not so much political science. It's not so much theory, it's practice.
Mhm.
And I worry. I personally believe that we're doing in Ukraine, for the time being at least, is the best thing we can do. We're bleeding Russia in very real terms, although not financially. Because the price of oil has gone so high, even though they're shipping their oil at a tremendous discount, it's still a hell of a lot more than they were getting before. So financially, they're not hurting. But they're losing a tremendous number of troops. And the people who are being drafted don't, at least according to the articles I'm reading, and they may be giving a left-handed view of things, are not motivated. And there is also a underground in Russia that seems to be fighting. So it would seem to me if Russia is able to blunt this offensive and hold more or less the ground that they had as of last winter, then maybe it's time to say, okay, we can't win, and at some point Russia may decide that they need to make the West hurt more. And one of the ways to do it, obviously, is to attack the Balkan state, the not Balkan, the Latvia and
Lithuania.
Estonia. The which, but they might even decide tactical nuclear weapons. And then what? Or more likely, they allow one of the nuclear power plants that they control to start doing a meltdown.
Mhm.
And now large swaths of not only Ukraine, but depending upon which direction the wind is blowing. Hi, Colleen.
Hey, just
Um,
get my video going.
okay. Just to catch you up, we're talking about what should the United States be doing in terms of our support of Ukraine. And we're sort of kicking around a whole bunch of things, but we haven't gone too much further than either continuing what we're doing or possibly trying to force Ukraine into negotiating
Hi,
something.
Chuck.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Chuck.
I made it.
It's all here. Um,
Anything we can do to make it to get them to a point where they can come to some kind of an agreement. I mean, they got to sit at the same table. We do this kind of thing at work all the time where like three different people say, I got to do this, or we should do that, or we should do it. Never gets done until everybody sits down at the table together. All the people that have to make decisions have to sit at the table and, you know, come to some kind of an agreement. Obviously, the humanitarian side of what's going on is terrible. There's a lot of innocent people that are kind of in the throes of all of this. And, you know, there's all kinds of other things going on that, like, you know, you can say what you want about what started the war, but, you know, there's always money involved. And whoever's profiting from it should get, you know, we should try to figure out who that is and just expose it and bring everybody to the table. That's what I think.
but
I don't think it's
again,
money. I think it's philosophy. Russia just simply wants Ukraine back because it used to be part of Russia. As a matter of fact, where is it? The capital of Russia used to be in Ukraine.
Kyiv. Kiev was
Kiev.
So
Kiev.
I'm sorry,
Kiev.
Kiev. Yeah.
actually, in
And
a sense, Ukraine could say that Russia is part of Ukraine because the Russian civilization uh, really started in Kiev, and spread north. The Orthodox religion, for example, the home was to the south in Ukraine, not in Russia. But no, I hear what you're saying, and the problem that appears to be happening right now is that there are very, very hard positions. Um, Zelensky says Ukraine is Ukraine, and we are not going to stop fighting until we get back what's ours. Putin is saying Ukraine probably shouldn't exist at all, but at minimum, all the Russian areas, um, eastern Ukraine and the Crimea, should be part of Russia. Meanwhile, the country of Ukraine is being flattened, and whenever this ends, however it ends, somebody's got to rebuild. So those until there's some break in people's ideas as to what it should be, I don't see how you sit down.
Well, you have to sit down. I mean, at some point you have to, because there's a lot of people involved. So people
Right.
do have to sit down regardless. And if it takes, I mean, I think the United States should be more of a person or a group or entity, a superpower, if you want to say it that way, but be the one that, kind of be the adult in the room and say, okay, guys, we really need to come together here before more is lost and people can't make a life again. So, I mean, we have to kind of be a leader in that way. We shouldn't be, supplying, and we certainly shouldn't be the ones rebuilding. It's not our country, and stuff like that. But we do need to get everybody at the table. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Chuck? You haven't said anything yet.
Well, I just joined.
I
I just joined in myself.
Me too. I know. I just did too.
I just feel that the Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and all this money that's going there, I just don't have a lot of faith that this money is the majority of this money is being appropriated correctly. And I think the European countries should be doing more than what we're doing. But I don't know how this is all going to end myself. I don't have a lot of confidence that it's going to end well.
When you
Chuck,
say,
do you think there's money going there, or do you think it's just equipment? I think it's equipment, and they value they put a value on the equipment that's been being sent over. I don't think we're sending money.
I think we are, Paul.
well, I'm
Okay.
sure we're sending some money to keep the government going, but when you look at the billions supposedly that we're sending, it's equipment, it's tanks, it's bullets, it's rifles, and I think that's relatively easy to verify. There's certainly some cash being sent. I don't disagree with that, but I think that's a minor portion of the money, of the value that we're sending.
I'm not sure about that, Bob. I'm not sure that's how accurate that statement is. I don't have any way to dispute what you're saying, but I don't feel in my gut that that's what is happening. I think it's a lot more money than I think you're saying.
Well, just look at all the local things that have been going on. Like, I see signs. Well, when it first started happening, you were seeing signs everywhere. I know for sure that the town of Bedford, they are actively raising funds for Ukraine, and I don't know how they're sending it, but they're actively generating funding from their community. And then I'm sure they're not the only ones. And that's just private. That's just towns that are doing that in Massachusetts. And there's probably so many more that are doing it privately that it adds up. And then of course there's money going there. It was going there. I agree with Chuck. Ukraine is a corrupt country. The fact that it's in the throes of something like this right now, there's a lot of speculation as to like what is happening in Ukraine and why it's happening, but it certainly exposes a lot when you start to see the targeting and the things that are being targeted, and there is money going there. It's not just equipment. Equipment, yes, because the military industrial complex has a huge interest in this war progressing to World War III. And, they're not interested at all in anyone coming to any table at all. They want it to go right to the next level, and because that's when they start making more money. So I agree with Chuck. I think there's a ton of money going there.
Yeah, I think Putin's very concerned that if Ukraine gets control of their country, that they'll end up joining NATO. He certainly doesn't want that to happen.
And I think that's fairly clear. And I don't know necessarily that that NATO would insist on accepting Ukraine. If I were Ukraine, I would question anything short of joining NATO, because when Ukraine, and I don't remember the date, 1999 or whatever the heck it was, when the Soviet Union broke apart, Ukraine had a whole bunch of nuclear weapons, and they agreed to give the weapons back to Russia in return for guarantees of territorial integrity, which in 2014, Russia said, I don't care. I got the weapons. I'll do what I want.
I think we as a country were the ones that guaranteed Ukraine that they'd be fine without their weapons.
But no, Russia was a signatory to that as well. And so now what do you do when somebody has said, I don't care what I agreed to before, this is the new reality, and I'm going to do what I think is appropriate now. And oh, by the way, I'm likely to do something different tomorrow. We were talking a little bit earlier, Colleen was saying, we need to sit down and have a conversation. How do you have a conversation when you don't trust the person you're talking to?
I see Oman looking like he wants to say something.
Well, I want to thank you. I wanted to mention a couple of points. I agree with Colleen that United States should act as the big brother or big one there and do something, because this is what I mentioned earlier, because before both of you came in, I was talking about how United States is essentially running a proxy war, but they should actually take the leadership position and get people together somehow or the other, force them, but at the same time, do not make Ukraine as the scapegoat. Get Putin do something, because at this time, we were talking about earlier that Putin could also do similar things with other countries where they are saying my Russians are suffering in X, Y, and Z countries which are close by. So we can't predict what Putin is going to do. Somehow, United States show leadership, become innovative and stop this. But at the same time, the second part to this is what my comment is that yes, money is going because there are communities collecting money. I would imagine most of the money does not go to the government; it goes through the NGOs. And are we then saying, as Chuck said, it's all corrupt? Does that mean all those NGOs are also corrupt? I don't know. I have no handle on all these. So with that, I'm going to stop.
Well, I just want to say that I'm not as concerned about the money going to the NGOs. I'm more concerned about the money going to the pockets of some of these elites in Ukraine.
I I question if there's that much money. By the way, I agree with you that wherever there's money, there will be corruption, and that's true anywhere. And the question is, do you do nothing because there might be corruption, or do you try to control the corruption as best you can while accomplishing whatever purpose? We
I
know
don't think
there's money getting to the people because they're eating.
I don't think we're doing anything to control where that money's going. And Paul must have something to add.
I agree that it's going to either the NGOs or I guess the question is, what money is going where? Is the United States government sending money to Ukraine, or is it individuals in the United States sending money to individuals in Ukraine? And individuals are individual groups, like, for instance, churches or some food distribution, that kind of thing. They certainly need money because their buildings keep getting hit. Their apartment buildings keep getting hit by bombs, and there's, I guess, in my perspective, Russia has a war against the Ukrainian people, not the Ukrainian forces. They keep targeting places where peaceful people are living, and that's where the money is needed to keep the country going, as opposed to keeping the war going. The war is going because countries, Eastern Europe, European countries and the United States are sending equipment in the form of dollars, but it's equipment to Ukraine for their war effort. That's my opinion.
Well,
And my understanding that we're depleting our own equipment for our own self-defense greatly, much more than we probably realize.
well, I agree that
We're
we're
sending
depleting.
old equipment and replacing it with new equipment.
I'm not sure we're replacing the equipment at anywhere near the rate that we're shipping it over.
Yeah, if we didn't leave so
You're
much
probably
in
right.
Afghanistan, we might have some to send over there.
Well,
We
the
won't
stuff
have
we left
anything
in
to send to
Afghanistan
Taiwan
were
if
things
we-
we gave to the Afghan army.
Yeah.
That was gone. And I wonder if you ship a tank from Afghanistan to whatever port and then put it on a boat, whether it's cheaper to just build a new tank. But that's an argument for a different day.
We don't have any equipment in Afghanistan.
What was the last country that we left? So we left people and equipment. What was the last
in
one?
Afghanistan, but we don't
Afghanistan.
have any dibs in that equipment in Afghanistan any longer.
No, we don't, because we left
That's all
it
for the
there.
Chinese and the Russians.
But
Exactly.
that's stuff that we gave or sold to the Afghan military more than anything else. I don't know that there was stuff that was still under a lot of stuff. There was obviously some, but a lot of stuff that was under U.S. control at that point.
And as far as I know, a lot of equipment that was still functional was made dysfunctional as the army was leaving.
Yeah,
I agree with Bob there that a lot of equipment that was actually given to Afghanistan was given to Afghanistan army. And lo and behold, when the Afghanistan Afghanistan government collapsed, of course, all the equipment stayed with the army, and next thing you know, the Taliban took it over, and that's still with the army. So that's we legally and legitimately gave it to the army, and next thing you know, the boss is different. We can't do anything about it. That's the U.S. policy mistakes.
Yeah, Iraq would be a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that it's still we're caught with the question at some point in the near future, do we want to change our policy towards Iraq? And I think one of the not Iraq, Ukraine. I
Ukraine.
think one of the deciding factors will be how does this counter offensive go? I'm sure it will not drive Russia out of all of Ukraine. I don't think that's practical. But if they make major territorial advances, does that make you more willing to support Ukraine going forward? Or do you think that then Putin will be willing to compromise, not give up what he said, but at least compromise some of what he said, which would allow people to go to the table and negotiate?
I don't think Putin wants to give up Crimea and the whatever that sea is there. He wants control, 100% control of that, to the east of Ukraine.
Black Sea, I think
Black
what you're
Sea.
talking
He
about.
wants the bridge.
Mhm.
Yeah, he wants the bridge, and he wants Crimea. And if he can get northern Ukraine, he'll take it. But the whole reason for the war is to get Crimea in Putin's mind.
Well, he had
And
Crimea,
he just
and there was nothing other than
no, he didn't.
rhetoric about Crimea until after Putin invaded.
No, the war has been going on, as you say, since 2014.
Okay,
Which
I
started
said,
with Crimea.
yeah, but there was no fighting. Effectively, Putin put up a flag, and Ukraine wasn't in a position to do anything about it. My understanding.
Right, but they were fighting. They were fighting all the time. Not very many people, but they were fighting all the time. That's why we were sending weapons there. We were sending anti-tank weapons, and we were sending all kinds of weapons since 2014.
Okay, maybe I don't have that information in front of me. I thought that the fighting that we were talking about was in eastern Ukraine, not Crimea.
I agree. I'm confused. I'm confused.
Isn't that eastern Ukraine?
I'm confused about that.
Isn't Crimea
No, it's south.
Crimea is separate. Crimea is separate.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's in my as far as I know, Crimea